Juby, I think we are good to.
Yes. Good evening, dear friends, dear students, faculty, and Father Dr. Augustine P. We are indeed happy and privileged to have this unique and very interesting topic. We apologize for a little delay. Father Augustine is joining us from the States, and there was a little problem in the connecting. Father Augustine, who is a founder director of the Institute of Advanced Interdisciplinary Studies, IAISS, okay, and Father is a research dean of this institute, and Father holds an MSc in psychology from Madras University, MA in biomedical ethics, and Father also has done his studies and done his PhD, philosophy, and an expert in this field. I'm sure Father will open up. He obtained his PhD in ethics in geoengineering from Dublin City University in 2017. And we had a privilege of listening to Father when we had an international seminar on religious practices in our extension center at Siloam. And a session that Father took us really touched all of us, irrespective of religion, faith, culture, and the divine dimension into many things, science into many of our religious things. And I requested Father if you could talk to our young people who are scientific minded, technology minded, and bring this divine dimension and let's say our religious dimension or spiritual dimension together. And that's how we have framed this webinar and titled the seminar or webinar as Did God Make Brain or Brain Make God? We are indeed privileged. I thank Sir Nathaniel, who is there on Zoom, managing the technical part of it, and welcome Father Augustine P, who is a resource and well-versed in this topic to present us this. Father, once again, welcome. And we from St. Anne's College, Shillong, we are privileged to listen to you. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Father Joby. It was indeed great meeting you and interacting with you in Shillong. And this is indeed a privilege to follow up on that. I appreciate your introduction and thank you for the warm words of welcome that you extended to me. Further, I am glad to know that your students are scientifically minded, technologically minded. Our mission is targeting such sort of groups who are confused with meanings and who are really in the quest for meaning. And from the perspective of the sciences, especially the neurological sciences, we try to impart some meaning. Can I share my screen now?
So,
okay. The title of our presentation is Dr. Joby already mentioned, did God create brain or did brain create God? This is a metaphorical formulation by which we mean, is religion, God, spirituality, are they merely cultural products artificially fabricated by persons with vested interests? This is the tendency of the millennials to think so. How far justified are such claims? That is one argument. Or did God create brain? God creating brain means we being originally programmed us to understand God. It is as something natural and biological to us. Is religion something like that? Is God something like that? Or did brain create God? That is to say, this is a kind of hallucinatory experience. That is the point that we are raising here. So this is in a way a neurological revisit of religion, we say. Is spirituality as an affair of the uneducated old ladies? Is it a sick man's dream? This is how Freud would define religion and God's prayer and so on. How far right is he? Is religion an invention of the priest? This is what leftists or liberalists traditionally are inclined to depict religion. Priests with vested interests who have invented religion. Is God a social construct out of our fear complex? God senses, God consciousness was born. This criticism is there. Will religion wither away like a dew in the morning sun? This is David Hume, an atheistic philosopher, Western philosopher, his criticism. And this is the tendency, or this is the prediction about religion throughout. We find in the secular world altogether, especially among the millennials, the postmodern humans find it hard to accept the claims of the traditional religion. How far true is that? Is prayer a futile exercise? Let us say, will science, especially neuroscience, will have something to say along this line? That is what we are trying here. Firstly, since our response is from the neurological perspective, I wish to place our discussion in its neurological context. A few words of introduction about the human brain. Human brain is the most complex machine that the nature has produced. Nothing parallel to it the nature has produced. 100 billion neurons and about 1,000 to 10,000 synapses for each of these neurons. And each one producing millions of proteins. Taking together the entire complexity of the brain, somebody has accounted it so. The universe, in the 20 billion galaxies in the universe, there are 200 billion galaxies in the universe, there may be about as many atoms. That will be 1 followed by 100 zeros. Whereas if we go into the total number of connections in the brain, this will be 1 followed by 800 zeros. Then you can imagine the complexity that our brain is carrying. This is the data quoted by V.S. Ramachandran. He is a renowned neuroscientist from Chennai, head of the Department of Neuroscience in California University. Now he is sick, cannot do much. Otherwise, he was rated as one of the top 10 scientists to be watched out in the 21st century by the Time magazine. Okay, now we wonder how ChatGPT is unable to reach anywhere near our brain. A neuroscientist in Louisiana wanted to reproduce part of the brain of a rat, only 10,000 neurons. It took about 8,000 computer processors to place which a big hole was required. Accordingly, the scientist says, if we are able to reproduce the entire complexity of our human brain onto computers, it will take as a number of football courts to place those computers, it seems. It is such a gigantic, complex, and mysterious reality that we carry on over us under our skull. Okay, and there are so many things to speak about brain, and not going into this detail for want of time. And this is from Stephen Hawking. What he says now, if we can grow embryos outside the human body, it will allow bigger brains and greater intelligence. The size of the uterus of our minds, of our mothers, does really limit the size of our brain. Therefore, somehow, if we can create brain in the laboratory dish one day, Hawking is hoping that we will be able to produce superhumans. And the above questions that we raised just now, they could be answered from the point of view of neuro-religion. This is altogether a new branch of theology as well as neuroscience. Science is studying religiosity, spirituality, theology today. And top scientists in the world like Andrew Newberg, Carol Albright, Eugene Aquila, V.S. Ramachandran, they have made immense contributions to this field. This is the cover page of the Newsweek magazine, one of the top journals formerly published from the United States. It carried a late theme on neurotheology, how we are wired for spirituality, God and the brain. So almost every week, a new book is being published along this line. This is not a fringe discipline, going to be a mainstream branch of science, philosophy, and theology, or in interdisciplinary studies. Before I venture into answering those questions, we will together do that. Let me introduce to you a couple of religious puzzles which are neurologically significant. And at the end of our presentation, kindly see if you get the right answers for that. During prayer, no, this Namibian faith healer, her face would be emitting a flash of light. Is it a supernatural phenomenon or it's caused by physiological causes? Scientists are struggling to find an answer to that. And when this Pentecostal preacher lays his hands on the faithful, no, they fall back as though they have been electrified. What is the mechanism behind that? Neuroscientists have some answers to that. Again, look at this picture. You may perhaps, this was very popular since the 1960s. This Buddhist monk in southern Vietnam burns himself to death protesting the government's torture policy against a priest. The point to be noted here is that while he has been burning himself down likewise, he did not move a finger. He did not utter a single word. Normally, what would be the reactions when somebody is burned? But see, this man is absolutely silent and still. How is it possible? He went to the public junction, sat in meditation, poured petrol over him and set fire to himself. This is what has happened. This is a sage who lived in Arunachal in Tamil Nadu in the 19th century. Even while in meditation, his part of his body would be eaten by reptiles, it seems. He wouldn't know about that. The great mystic and sage Ramana Maharshi. How is it possible? About the great mystic and saint Teresa of Avila, it is said that she would be elevated upward, freed from gravity while in prayer. It is historical, it seems. Such strange phenomena, how do they occur? Kindly just to take note of this internal division of the brain. We don't have time. I will not go into those details. I will skip them. So let us come to neurotheology. The questions that we raised and the paradoxes that we explain, religious puzzles that we explained here will be answered from the point of view of the neuro-religion that we are. What these neuroscientists are doing now, they scan the brains of Franciscan nuns, Buddhist monks who are well-versed in meditation, who are very skillful in meditation, and study what is happening with the help of PET, SPECT, fMRI scans. And they study as to what is happening in the brain while they do meditation and prayer. One important claim that this exponents of neuro-religion makes is that our brain is intrinsically tuned to have an idea of God. There is a God part in the brain. The idea of the divine is in a way coded in our genes. Okay. When we say God part in the brain, please do not understand in this manner. This is Homer's brain. Homer said, the Greek philosopher Homer long back said, this part of the brain is what is reserved for God experience. No. Contemporary neuroscience does not identify a particular spot in the brain as the God spot. God part is put in parentheses here, no, in inversion. What does that mean? This should be understood analogically or metaphorically. What is the idea of saying that there is God part in the brain? That means we humans have a biological programming within. We are biologically oriented to God. There is an idea of God is somehow coded in our genes. So this very well retorts to the traditional criticism against religion that this is an artificial construct, this is a hallucination, this is a social construct. Of course, we don't rule out any of the elements of the sociality or the social role of the society in making us religious. But that is not the core of human religiosity. Unless this is biologically programmed within us, one will not be able to be religious or spiritual. So like this religiosity is evolving. That is how we should say. Life originated about 3.5 billion years ago in a single cell bacterium. As it passed through several complex stages and reached at the most complex product of nature, that is the human brain, we just saw that, its life or matter has obtained the property for prayer or spirituality also. By say spirituality and prayer, we do not mean the conventional, traditional, or the structured prayers of the religions, but our capacity or orientation to pray. That is not a social construct. Rather, this is anthropological, thoroughly rooted in our human nature. That is the idea of saying that there's a God part in the brain. Okay. Mankind is hardwired to have faith in a spiritual reality. Spiritual consciousness is integrally linked to our neurophysiological nature, as in any of our cognitive capacity. We are biologically programmed to understand and interpret God. This is the idea, basically. Our spiritual cognition, perception, sensation, behaviors are the manifestations of impulses generated from the neural connections. Don't think that brain is artificially creating that, because brain is endowed with this capacity. Saint Augustine said, his famous philosopher and theologian Saint Augustine in the 4th century said, our hearts are created for thee. We are created for you, O God. Our hearts will not rest until it reaches you. That is the incessant psychological urge and the quest of the humans. We have an irrepressible anthropological orientation to God, which will not be satisfied unless it is quenched. Why humans run after pleasure so much? Why we tend to be so much worldly? Basically, this speaks for the fundamental spiritual nature of humans, it seems. What is that? God is infinite happiness. Humans have an internal urge to be happy, and that we are substituting with the lower levels of happiness or pleasures. That is how we tend to be so much pleasure seeking in life. Will to pleasure. That is how Soren Kierkegaard, the existential philosophers, will say, we are created as human beings with will to happiness. God is infinite happiness. Unfortunately, this will to happiness is misplaced for will to pleasure. And the findings of neuro-religion would go something along that line. So these are the prominent figures of whom I already mentioned. And this is the technique that they are to scan the brains of Franciscan nuns and Buddhist monks and the findings and the data they discover. See, what you see on top is the PET scan image of the brain before the start of the meditation. During meditation, what is happening? More red color you find there, no? That means more oxygenated activity is there in more parts of the brain. And when it comes to trance states, what is trance, you know? The peak point of mystical experience or God experience. Our entire brain is reserved exclusively for facilitating this experience alone at that trance stage. See, on the top you find the brain of the Buddhist monk, and the bottom what you have is the PET scan image of the Franciscan nuns. The entire brain is reserved for facilitating that experience. How is it possible? Because this is there, biologically programmed. The point therefore here is that religiosity, spirituality, or prayerfulness, like any other talent, needs to be nurtured. Spirituality is not something coming down from above. Rather, of course, this is a gift of God, great dimension of grace we don't roll out. And if we have the skill for art, to be an artist, how much training have we got to undergo? Similarly, to be a musician, it needs a constant training and dedication, isn't it? Otherwise, we spoil that talent. Similar is the case with the human being's spirituality also. Seeds for spirituality and prayerfulness is sown in our brain. This needs to be nurtured and cultivated like any other talent. Unless this is properly oriented, those seeds will go futile, fruitless. That is the point. I know some liberal philosophies today are advocating this idea that when a person becomes mature, Let him choose his religion, whether he should be a believer or not. Or if at all he wishes to be a religious, let him choose his own religion. All these ideas look very fine. Of course, here, these persons are confusing religiosity for established or structured religions. That is not a right understanding. Religiosity or our orientation to spirituality is something very innate to us. Unless it is trained and tapped and developed at the proper times, that is from the infancy onwards, we go handicapped as regards our anthropological nature. This is the pickup from the neuro-religion we need to say. And there are findings which says that childhood is the most productive or the receptive period for sowing the seeds of religion also. So what is happening in the trance stage? Deafferentation of the posterior superior parietal lobe. Parietal lobe, you know, this top part of the brain. And this region is responsible for our bodily awareness, our self-consciousness, our spatio-temporal orientation. Okay. And the blocking of the inputting of the data to this region is happening at this level. Okay. Blocking of the inputting of the data. And as a result, what happens? We lose our self-consciousness, space-time orientation. This puts us in union with the entire cosmos. Nature mysticism. This has been characteristics of all sages and saints that human beings at the spiritual ecstasy, we become one with the universe, one with the universe. Nature mysticism, that is possible. That is the insight of all religious tradition, be it Hinduism, Christianity, especially Eastern religions like Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, and tribal religions. All of them have this affinity with the nature as the central focus of their religious experience. Being united with the entire creation, seeing God in everything and everything in God. And this is neurologically inbuilt undoubtedly. At the same time, excessive activation of the temporal lobe, this part of the brain. And temporal lobe habitats the limbic system, which is said to be the emotional brain. And as the neurons in the limbic system fire more and more, what happens now? We become ecstatically joyful, ecstasy, happiness, joy, delight. Those things are taking over us at this point. Okay. Now, this answer many things also, I am forgetting those things, skipping those things for want of time. What is it? These are the different regions of the brain that are activated in meditation. If only we orient our brain accordingly, can we say, if only we program and train the brain accordingly, these regions of the brain will be developed for spirituality. Otherwise, they would remain dormant and dead. Cosmic unity, as I said above, when the parietal lobes quiet down, person feel one with the universe. And this is the juncture of these three lobes, parietal, temporal, and frontal lobes. As when this region is not developed, it is very difficult for a human person to believe in God. No preaching or no homilies, no advice will be able to produce any result in the brain of such persons unless this region is adequately developed, the juncture of three lobes. Again, say we humans are programmed to see and pray because we human brain has evolved a metaphor system within the brain whereby we have an orientation to concretize our experience. Of course, we have the idea of the transcendental God as an idea, but that is not enough. We human beings have an idea of God which needs to be concretized in images and symbols. That is why in prayer halls or in spiritual centers, we have representations of God's images. That is not idolatry. That is a misunderstanding that we have today. That is the demand of our neurological structure. That is the objectification of our human brain. We need images. That helps because human brain has developed this metaphor center within itself to see, to perceive, touch. Visibility and tangibility is an important part of the human spirituality. We need to. Okay. Then religious emotions, as I already said, when the temporal lobe neurons fire, religious emotions are occurring. And for those who are really exposed to meditation, it is easy to come to religious experience and ecstasy through meditation. Attention, okay. And the culmination of all these things, as for the Buddhist monks, this is an experience of nirvana. As for the Franciscan nuns, this is a kind of mystical union. Nirvana is basically ecstasy, not experience of the void or emptiness. Mystical union with the Heavenly Father. There is a personal and affective content for the experience of the Franciscan nuns at the peak experience. Okay, so much about neuro-religion and its consequence. Now also I wish to present to you some ideas that this exponents of neuro-religion are speaking about from the neurological perspective related to spirituality. What I found is especially the neurological understanding of love. As I said earlier, as we advance in spirituality, what happens? We begin to love the entire creation, seeing God's resemblances therein, isn't it? So Fred Muir is an American neuroscientist. He has published a bestseller called The True Love. True Love. What's the point of this true love? No, he says, every stage of human love has got its own purpose. As I said earlier, we humans are created to be happy forever because we are oriented to God. And unfortunately, we misplace the objects of our happiness for several pleasures that are temporal in nature, fleeting pleasures we are espoused to. Noor says such things, such replacements are only starting points of our love. Love should begin at the small, shorter level, lowest level, and should grow and transcend towards higher and higher levels, towards mystical levels. When the lovers begin to love each other, in romance, in the early stages of this love or romance, our brain is filled with excitement hormones. Adrenaline, noradrenaline, serotonin, dopamine, this sort of excitement hormones our brain is endowed with. They give joy and ecstasy in romance. Okay, but when 3-4 years after this romantic phase, brain will switch off these excitement hormones. Eventually, brain will switch over to another type of neurotransmitters called long-term non-apoptides. They are oxytocin, vasopressin, such neurotransmitters. They have a special purpose. These neurotransmitters puts an end to the excitement phase or period and calls the human brain to commitment. These are the neurotransmitters responsible for commitment, dedication. Love in the second phase is meant for commitment. This goes very well along with the theology of marriage and love advocated by traditional religions as well. Love can begin with romance. Love can express itself in sexuality, but that is not the final objective of love. Objective is to commit oneself to love. Love should be established, stabilized, and consolidated. Otherwise, that is superficial. Only at the excitement level, it seems. Now, what social psychologists are telling us now, many romantic couples find it very difficult to pass from this first stage of love to the second stage of love, from the romantic or the excitement stage to the stage of commitment. That's why it is said that most divorces are taking place in the year from 5 to 7. Especially, it is said that in the married life, there is a 7th year itching in married life, it seems. Itching. You know what is that, no? Married life becomes very challenging, especially beginning with the 5th, 6th, 7th year. And those who are able to get why this itching is there, because our neurological change has taken place. Nature is calling us to another higher order of love. And those who are able to get rid of this excitement phase, they look for another excitement with another person. That is not how nature has programmed us, basically. Love demands commitment. And that is what. And the next, every phase of love has an evolutionary purpose. This is called the acid test of love. Why honeymoon ends? We have the answer here. And love has to go to certain rocky patches. This is what Fred Noor would say. He has nothing to do with religion. He is not a spiritual figure in that sense. His teaching on love is not informed by any religious theologies. Okay, he is speaking purely as a neuroscientist based on his own neurological researches. That is why his book became a bestseller, he says. And he says the happiest stage in the life of the couples is not the honeymoon period. He would say this is the old age. Because at that level, there is greater dependency, greater sharing, greater giving and receiving. Even sexuality at this stage is more pleasurable, he would say. He claims. He says, sexuality is not something that is happening between the legs of the human, rather it is between the hearts of the humans. Here there is an idealization of the very act of human sex itself. Even old age is very graceful in his perspective. And this takes us to the ideal love which the philosophers have been educated from the early stages onward. Plato said, no, human love, although it begins sensually, it has to transcend to a kind of mystical love. And for those who are spiritually emancipated, transcending to programming our brain. So be it married love, spiritual love, it all demands nurturing our brain in a balanced manner. Brain is the seat of our emotions. In potency, we have all these resources at stake within us. But unfortunately, many of our neural properties go unexplored and unutilized or unknown to us. And we make judgments about ourselves with our superficial brains. If only we are enlightened adequately, can we have sensible and balanced judgments about love, the purpose and meaning of life, all these things. So everyone is in a way a slave to one's own ignorance, neurologically speaking. Darwin would say it is ignorance that is giving more confidence than knowledge. When I look at this evolution, neurological ideas from philosophical point of view, I am inclined to think that this gives an explanation as to many of our cultural disasters. Okay, there are several superficial philosophies which says that love is enough. Marriage is unwanted. Love making is enough. Sexuality is enough. No children required. Isn't it? Or spirituality is enough. No religion is required. Church is not needed. Christ is enough. This sort of spirituality is there, no? Basically, that is unbecoming to the way that our human brain is programmed. We need structures. We need organizations. We need to express concretely. We need a tangible and visible expressions to our spirituality. This is where society comes into play. Society has got its own role to play in giving expression to our spirituality altogether. Okay, so much about these are the two neurotransmitters of emotion, norepinephrine and dopamine, and they play a crucial role in our spiritual joys also. Again, another finding with neuro-religion is that this provides a wonderful mechanism for coping with pain. Several experimental studies have found that persons who have a spiritually developed brain have a greater mechanism to withstand pain for longer time for those who have no faith in God. And this is true about the Kirtan Kriya memory experimental study also. I have the details of this study. We don't require, I'm only just reporting this. And this is what is happening to the brain at that stage. And neuropsychological results, fMRI scan also very well underscore this point. And this is another study conducted in the Oxford Center for Mind, an experiment conducted between atheists and the religious believers. The lady with ermine of Michelangelo and the picture of Our Lady were given to both of them, and their pain was inflicted onto their hands, and their perception of pain. See, there's a significant difference now. Perception, as for the atheist, the image was not helpful for coping with pain, or very less helpful only. Whereas for those believers, the image of Our Lady was very much helpful for coping with pain. Significant correlation is there between religious belief and pain. And there are also several other studies supporting and complementing this finding. I am only focusing on the neurological research here, and many other studies also. Anyway, we don't go into the details here. There are several reports. And what we should understand here now, from all these ideas about the neuro-religion, the biological programming of brain, spirituality, or our capacity to pray, this is something biologically, evolutionarily, naturally inbuilt, intrinsic or innate to us, we need to say. These kinds of things. And I can complement this all from quantum physics, modern biology, and so on. Since you are students, I don't go into such academic details. Maybe I will just mention, I think I have about, what is time now? Another 5 minutes or so. I will wind up soon. Say, American psychologists performed an experiment, very funny experiment, I would say. I also don't subscribe to it, but that is very interesting. I can understand the point about. They conducted an experiment to check whether prayer has anything to do with the plants, the growth of plants. They planted same type of plants in 2 sets. Same nurturing, same feeding, everything the same. Except that for one set of plant, there was a group to pray for. And after 6 months, measurement of growth was taken. The study claims that the plants which were prayed for showed 20% extra growth. To me, it was very strange that this thing, but I can understand why does this happen. I don't question the result because it can happen. Basically, the non-distinction between matter and spirit. A spiritual act like a prayer can be effective in producing a physical result, like the growth of plants. Otherwise, also there are studies saying that human proximity with plants can produce greater growth, it seems. Plants that are exposed to human beings daily, they have more growth, it seems. There are studies too. Anyway, I do not know the mechanism involved in that, but the technique here used was prayer, no? Not to understand it literally, this presupposes a wonderful program. For this reason, we must not assume that there is a causal relationship between prayer and the immediate result. Prayer is effective, certainly, undoubtedly, but not in the manner of the real immediate result that we see. No prayer goes in vain, but we may not be able to find an immediate proximate result for prayer in the manner that we expect. We could say somewhere in the cosmic wholeness, in the overall setting, it contributes to the harmony of the world. I may be praying for my own healing, but the result may be the growth of the plants or somebody else's healing. This is the interconnectedness fabric that the cosmos is. This needs to be complemented from several. I know this is more confusing to you. Within this short span of time, we cannot, maybe if circumstances permit on another forum, we can dwell on the neuroscience of prayer and prayer alone in this regard. Anyway, I would say, even if there is no God, one should be praying. I am sorry if I provoked anybody. Certainly we pray to God, to a personal God. God grants our prayer. If God is understood as harmony, a personal harmony of love, God is love. In that regard, prayer is in itself able to produce results. Okay, in that regard. Another point, then you might ask this question, why is there atheism? So there are so many non-believers, isn't it? There are many who are not believing in God. If prayer is something biologically programmed within us, why are there people who are not able to believe in God? See, is atheism an order in the brain or is it a disorder? Let me present you one or two neurological findings about this one. What they say, no? This Case Western Reserve University and Babson College together conducted a study. What they find, our human brain has the analytical network and the empathetic network within the brain. Analytical as well as empathetic. Let us say, what is this analytical and suppose we find somebody met with an accident and find him injured on the road. Our immediate intuition tells us that we should rush him to the hospital. But that is our empathetic mindset. But analytical mind will tell us, no, he deserves that because he was drunk or he abused a drug. As a result, he met with the accident, let him be there. This is the analytical mindset. But immediately, the empathetic mind will supersede the judgment of the analytical mind, and we will take him to the hospital. The point here is that whenever there is a tension, conflict between the analytical and the empathetic, depending on the circumstance, brain should be able to naturally push aside the network that is not relevant therein. And for religious believers, this study says this pushing aside is easy when confronted with the rational, analytical thinking and empathetic thinking. Whereas for non-believers who find it very difficult to believe in a God or personal God, this pushing aside does not take place. Some kind of fixation with the analytical mindset does not enable them to allow the empathetic network to push aside the analytical mindset as far as the ultimate questions are concerned. This may be slightly affecting their commitment to religion or God, it seems. A healthy brain, it seems, is one that is capable of balancing the pushing aside of the relevant network in the relevant context, we could say. And why does this happen, that this pushing aside is not possible? That is because of certain mutations, it seems, genetic mutations. Another study has complemented this finding and said that mutation that is sometimes leading to left-handedness and eventually to autism is also active in making people non-believers. Don't be scared by this statement. This is only a suggestion, only indicative. It doesn't mean that person with the left-handedness will not believe in God, or those who are autistic cannot be religious. That is not the idea. So the mutational issue, error that is taking place, that is causative of autism and so on, has also got a role to play in non-believers, that they find it difficult to do this pushing aside. This is not an exhaustive or reductionistic argument for atheism. After all, atheism we have not defined. Okay. Anyway, there are some neurological grounds for this kind of thing. That only you need to be picking up from my exposition here. This may be more confusing, I know. So at the same time, why do these scientists say? No, they say Atheism and theism are in a way siblings. How could they be siblings? Because these non-believers have a greater orientation towards the supernatural, it seems. This is what some studies say. Clay Routledge, North Dakota University. They espouse the religious believers and the non-believers to supernatural situations about the aliens, UFOs, all these things. And the non-believers were more excited about these kinds of supernatural entities. Okay, so therefore, unless our religiosity is properly quenched, humans will certainly run after other kinds of magics, black magics, myths, superstitions. Traditional religions have significantly lost their influence in the West and the Europe, we know. But what is the result of that? People are replacing their religiosity for other alternative religions. That is why the so-called New Age spiritual movements are so strong in this part of the world. Because this is incessantly innate to us, religiosity. Unless this is catered to by real solutions, real answers, we will be looking for something else, because human brain cannot remain empty and vacant as regards our spirituality. Okay, and baseline and contemplating God and several other phenomena also can be explained by means of this neuro-religion like stigmata, vision, hearing voices, all these things. I am not going into those details right now. Say, I will explain, though we revisit those religious puzzles which we covered in the beginning. The Buddhist monk was not feeling any pain. That is why he did not move a single finger. How is it possible? We have already, for those of you who have understood this presentation, have already got the answer. Our bodily awareness is switched off by brain in mystical experience at the trance stage. Those neural mechanisms responsible for pain, for facilitating pain also is taken over by trance stage. Therefore, there is no experience of pain. Similarly, it can also explain the elevation of Teresa of Avila. Our neurologists would say even matter or body itself is a construct of the mind. Mind is primary in constructing our body itself. When mind is completely in itself, freed from the body is no longer under the influence of gravity. It can happen, it seems. And there are several other studies also supporting this idea. I will skip these things, not to make it too much academic for you students. Then, near-death experience, NDE, people who were declared clinically dead, but made it back to life and reporting their experiences. As though they have been passing through a huge tunnel, they were being greeted by their forefathers, seeing candle, all these things. And experience of wonderful joy, hearing of singing. How does it happen? In fact, neuroscientists are a bit critical about these sort of reports. They say most of these things are near-death experience reports are projections of our mind. That is why 95% of these reports are culturally conditioned. If I am a Hindu, my near-death experience report will be also of a Hindu worldview. A Christian will see Our Lady, whereas a Hindu might see Paramasivan even after death. We know there is only one God, and this sort of differences does not remain after death. But why is that? Near-death experiences give such visions. That shows they are culturally conditioned. Therefore, you need not literally subscribe to these sort of reports. At the same time, this issue is not settled. You cannot rule out near-death experiences as such. There are some common patterns in all these experiences. A sense of something big, giant is over there. Something incomprehensible and indescribable is there in all these experiences. And latest experiments with the rats have shown that even after death, even after a rat is dead clinically, and the brain waves of the rat as dictated by the device shows that it is perfectly dead, 1.5 minutes after the cessation of the complete exhaustion of the brain waves, immediately the brain starts refunctioning, the resurrection. This is not a resurrection. This is a wrong time if you got it wrongly. So what is the point? Is it something indicative of the phenomena that is occurring to us after death? This is the latest finding in this field from published in the Scientific American. You know, Scientific American is perhaps the third best science journal after Nature and Science. Okay, they will not publish mere speculations unless there is an element of scientific credibility to that. Probably the elements of commonality in near-death experiences, as well as the elements that are indescribable or cannot be explained by brain sciences, suggest that there is something that is intrinsically inbuilt or something that is transcendently suggestive of these kinds of reports. So my scientific respect does not allow me to make too much speculation about these things. Later on, you can carry on your own researches in this thing, and if circumstances permit, we can again meet on this point. So what I have been trying to tell you, did God create brain or brain create God? I would say both answers are right. God created brain. That is to say, God invested the capacity for spirituality within the humans, in nature, in evolution, so that brain may know its God. Brain should know that there is a God, and God, he should be interacting with that experience of love and happiness beyond cutting across all religious barriers. As infinite love and happiness, brain should encounter God. And structured religions are only facilitating this transcendental experience. Did God create brain or brain create God? God did create human brain so that brain may create its God or know its God. This is how I would love to answer to these questions. So thank you for your attention. Sorry, I have been 5 minutes late to join you. I think my time is done. Am I fine here? Yeah.
Thank you, Father. We have a few questions, Father, in the chat box. Can you maybe?
There are questions in the chat box. Okay.
Yeah. We'll
maybe I should start from the
last. Yeah, maybe.
What is the final objective? Oh, okay. So while first one, good evening, Power. When if you have questions will be better. I think no need to put it. Will animals, even higher order ones, have spiritual sense? That's a good question. Animals do not pray in the or have spirituality in the sense as we say, because their brain is not developed as such. The mechanisms that we have in brain are not that much developed in the animals. But animals, by their very way of being, are spiritual beings, we could say. They are not consciously praying, but unconsciously they are part of the cosmic order. If we can, even a bacteria can be said to be intelligent. We say praying bacteria, altruistic bacteria. Bacteria is the single cell organism which was born first in life, in the history of life we know. Bacteriologists today tell us that the simple cell bacteria, the simplest cells have the most complex lessons to teach us. A single cell bacteria are said to be altruistic. Since they are living in colonies, if they are infected by virus, the entire colony will die out. Therefore, the infected bacteria will run out of the colony and commit suicide, it seems. Bacteriologists say this is suggestive of the presence of altruism in the bacterial world. Okay. And in order to protect their colony, they must renounce their reproductive faculties and become security guards for the colony. For that, they make a big sacrifice. If we consider altruism and self-sacrifice are modes of spirituality, we can say bacteria are very, very altruistic. Bacteria are spiritual. Okay. And higher expressions of this sort of self-giving love we can identify in animals. The immense bond of love and affection among the elephants. This is incredible. Although they are not objectifying their spirituality, we could say they are innately spiritual. They are not consciously spiritual, but by their very way of being, the entire creation is spiritual, we could say. In that regard, this goes very well with the traditional Catholic theology. In Pauline letter, we find the entire creation, not only we human beings who are the firstborns of creation, the entire creation, the non-human beings, the stones, the rocks, they are groaning in birth pang for his redemption as the children of God. And this is part of all other religious traditions as well. Superficially, I have answered you. Since I have other questions, let me move on to them. What is the final objective of love? Final objective, probably the background of this question is Frontner's teaching on true love. The final objective of love in theology, we know, love meeting love. That is human love, finite love, merging one with the infinite love, the divine love. That is the final objective of love in religious theologies. Hinduism would call it the fusion of the individual self with the universal self, the experience of the Tattvamasi. And Shvedashvara Upanishad says this is an experience of perfect love, coming close to that. And in other religious traditions also, the idea is the same, the merging, convergence of love with the infinite love. And now, coming back to sciences, what is the final objective of love? Love is not able to overcome death, but love is meant for making you very, very happy in life. Even in the old age, love is not going down. It is not a despair that is taking over humans. These are some of the fine teachings of the positive psychology, one of the prominent streams of psychology today, that we grow in love. And there are several areas speaking. And in 2000 years ago, Plato, the renowned Greek philosopher, had underscored this point. Love, beginning with the sensual love, passing through social love, passing through religious love, should go on to the ideal love, should transcend itself to the ideal love. In Plato, the word ideal is equivalent to heaven or God. Plato doesn't have a personal idea of God. Okay. Therefore, in philosophy also, the ultimate objective of love is merging with the ideal love, Platonic world of ideas. It is from there he speaks about the ideal love. That is a supernatural, transcendental love. In Christian theology, we call it agapic love, the experience of the love of the Abba Father. Okay. We will post on them. Sir, if everything happens in the universe for a particular reason, then why do people in and all around react so much to it? Okay, everything in the universe happens for a particular reason. Of course, this may be a pickup from my presentation, but this we should not consider as determinism or as an endorsement of certain claims of astrology. I still do not subscribe to those views. But the point here, maybe there is some point in who is that Argadeep Deb says. So for instance, let me call your attention to chaos theory, the butterfly effect in physics. Some of you may be studying that. Suppose in the portico of your St. Anthony's College, Shillong, a butterfly is flapping its wings. This will result in the production of a hurricane or a tornado in Japan 4 years later. Now, suppose butterfly flapped its wings twice, or it forgot to flap its wings. The result, 6 years later, there could be a severe drought in Virginia in the United States. Slight difference in the initial conditions, but results that are far apart. This is happening. That's one philosopher has said, you cannot move a single grain of sand from the surface of the earth without affecting the entire creation, it seems. Everything is so interconnected, it seems. At the same time, we should not understand this interconnectedness as something mechanical, deterministic, astrological. That is the point. Then your question is, why do people in and all around react so much? It's not clear to me what you mean by reaction so much. But the point is that in the long run, everything will turn out for the good. Basically, we should not get confused this question with the philosophy of evil. There is so much evil in the world. It does this interpretation of the interconnectedness of the universe or the chaos theory's butterfly metaphor should not be understood as an endorsement or justification for evil. Philosophers and theologians are still struggling to explain evil we do not know. Certainly, we should be reacting to evil. In the Northeast, we have so much evil. All across the world, in Manipur, not everywhere. Okay, I refer to that only. Okay, why is that? Should we not react? We should react. So, at the same time, this makes us hopeful and optimistic that in the long run, all these things may turn out for the good. If we go by Indian philosophy, an activity at one part of the cosmic change can produce results that are cosmically different. That is for the welfare of the cosmic whole. Therefore, does it rule out our reaction? I would say we must not roll out our positive. That is also an action. Reaction also is a positive action. It is not to indifference and lethargy that interconnectedness calls us, but to commitment. Because the other dimension of reality, the evil, needs to be balanced, to be checked. For that, activity is required, I am inclined to think. Okay, then. Are we needed to feel as urge to feel supernatural? Yeah, this is what I said. Now, do we have an urge towards supernatural beliefs? Yeah, that is what the authentic human nature is. As Saint Augustine theologically stated, our hearts are created for you, O God. It will not rest until it reaches thee, Saint Augustine said. And this is the supernatural belief. Okay, unless we cater this supernatural orientation through belief in a God or something supernatural, we will go for replacing this orientation with other semi-supernatural or even some of the superficial or superstitious beliefs. This is the key behind the strange phenomenon or strange expressions of New Age spiritual movements that we find in Western Europe now. Because we cannot negate this part. We have, this is part of our anthropological nature, that we cater to our supernatural urges. Because humans are open beings. We are not close-ended. As open beings, we need to have this supernatural orientation. Otherwise, this will find deviations. That is what the contemporary social and scientific data tell us. How are we to fully experience the urge of happiness, but to keep away from the urge to pleasure? And this is a good question in the sense, at the same time, this betrays a kind of bit of dualism in the sense, it does not assume a total negation of the pleasures. If this question is based on the true love, this is the starting point of love. Something along the line of the four grihast ashrams that the Indian philosophy would say, no? Brahmacharya, Garhastya, Vanaprastha, Sannyasa. Sannyasa is the form of highest happiness in this regard. What true love, the mystical love, Fred Noor would speak about. It doesn't negate Brahmacharya and Garhastya. But you should not end up with the Garhastya or the pleasurable love or the sexual love. That is not what humans are made up of. This is not a negation of the lower levels of pleasure. What Frednur says is that each level of love, each stage of love has got its own meaning and purpose. Each stage of love has its own purpose. Okay, therefore, should not content ourselves with the lower levels of love, but needs to be progressing to higher levels of love. Fully experience the urge of happiness, that might probably take place at the final stages of our life when we are detached from everything. And as we grow in the order of love now, the lower levels of love will naturally wither away, spontaneously wither away. There are some priests practice, including me, are practicing celibacy. Does it compromise with the idea of true love that Fred Noor is speaking about? Not quite. In Noor's study itself, there is the answer to that. If you are able to activate the higher order love within us, the lower order love at any moment can wither away from us. Therefore, certain religious traditions underscoring celibacy is not contrary to human nature. Rather, this is perfectly compatible with the data from neuroscience today that spirituality and sexuality have neighboring wirings within the brain. Neighboring wirings. When one set of neurons are growing thicker and fatter, this will subsume the neighboring set of neurons. If in me, sexual neurons are active and firing daily more and more, it will subsume my spirituality as well. Such a way, this will be harmful for my spirituality if I am excessively allowing my sexual wirings to grow thicker and fatter. It will be difficult for me to be spiritual. If I allow my spiritual neurons to grow more and more through prayer and other exercises, it will subsume my spirituality also. Sorry, my sexuality also. That is why Gandhiji said, at a certain level of spirituality, spontaneously you will be inclined to be a vegetarian or a celibate at any point of time. When sexual activities are cessated in old age, there is greater celebration of love. That is what Noor's study would say. So we need to be understanding these points clearly as to what is it is not necessarily by negating the lower levels of love that one reaches to the higher level of love. It could also be by appropriating properly the lower levels of love that one grows to the higher order love. And one, as the higher orders are reached, the lower orders are naturally subsumed by the brain. That is the idea. Okay, however, then how does brain's capacity for abstract thinking contribute to the concept of God and religious beliefs? Yeah, more than from neuroscience, I can answer this from the philosophical point of view, but since you are not with background in philosophy, I will not go into much details of what basically say no. There are so many questions. Okay, brain is basically, we have the capacity for generating universal ideas. We see white. Where does whiteness come from? That is basically a universal abstraction. And this sort of ideas, abstract ideas, must have seat in God. Or we have the orientation for happiness. We seek pleasure. There must be an ontological seat of happiness, that is God. We say something is good or something is bad. We have the moral distinction between good and evil. Where does this idea come from? The abstract idea of moral consciousness come from God. Okay, so from our physical, moral, spiritual experiences, we can generate abstract ideas. Brain has, if you're asking from the cognitive point of view, basically it presupposes those faculties. Still now, we do not know how ChatGPT works. They have developed the algorithm, but the way the algorithm works is not within the control of the developers of this technology, we know. That means there are unknown unknowns and unknown unknowns even in technology. Similarly, with the human brain too, there are several unknowns within the brain. Psychology, from the cognitive point of view, can explain the mechanism behind such abstractions. But even psychology or neuroscience doesn't know how the brain is programmed so. Why is it programmed in this manner? Probably there are unknowns in the neuroscience also, which is perhaps pointing to some sort of a concept of God or supernatural being, we could be saying. Okay. Father, how does spirit... Yes, Father?
Father Augustine, I think we will take one more question from there, and maybe since...
okay, Father. I will put all questions together and will quickly respond.
Okay,
how does spirituality intersect?
Otherwise, you can give your mail. They may have more questions. They can contact you.
Okay. I will put here in my
chat box.
Chat box. I can put my Pamplani at iaiss.com. Sorry that we cannot take up. I am right in AP. We cannot take up all these questions. Let me see if I can make a quick response to this. And this natural process explain phenomena of feeling of presence during a prayer of meditation. Yeah, that is true. Feeling of supernatural presence. That is explainable because our body goes off in that brain. If God is real and faith is an important part of life, a natural element even in our genes, how can one know that true God? How can we know which religion? Yeah, this is to be answered from the theological point of view, religious theology. Neuroscience does not deal with one particular religion or one particular God experience. It only primarily underscores the experience of God and the primacy of God experience. We need not go, from the neuroscience, this question cannot be answered. That is, but in the neuroscience, we see the ground for the universality of God experience and religious experience, cutting across all religions. That is how we should say that. Morality and ethics, I have already responded. Father, I think I have taken up almost more or less all questions. Yeah, more or less all questions have been responded to quickly. Thank you for making this arrangement, Father.
Thank you so much, Father. Father, thank you. It was a wonderful session. I'm sure more questions will hit your email and your inbox. I'm sure they will be able to take. Thank you, Father, for leading us. And I'm sure we have seen that there is a divine plan behind our existence in creation, and we are able to realize it to the best. Once again, thank you so much, Father. We will connect to you more. I'm sure we look forward taking it and more opportunities. Once again, thank you. Father will also be there for a seminar from the computer science department and value education. We're coming in October, and I'm sure we will connect it. Father is currently in Virginia, right, Father, now?
Yeah, yes, Father, in the States.
Fine. Okay. Once again, thank you. We will be posting the link for feedback, and those attended, please fill in the certificates, the feedback, so that we are able to issue the e-certificates. Once again, thank you, Father. We'll connect to you. God bless you.
Bye. God bless. Thank you so much.
എനിക്ക് ഇഷ്ടപ്പെട്ടു കേട്ടോ കാരണം നമ്മള്